I have this belief that whatever we're teaching to our former selves. So the book is written for those people out there who know that there is something more. We are not alone, that perhaps synchronicities are starting to appear, because before I had my spiritual awakening, I was well aware that I had the universe supporting me, because many things had happened in my past where you could only explain them as miracles and magical and synchronicities. So lots of events happened for me to know for sure that I was not alone, that there is so much more than what we think there is. Hello, beautiful people. This is Eleni and Karen, and today I am super excited to be talking about my new book that I have just finished writing, and I'm getting ready to pitch to a publisher. And I'm going to be talking all about it. Like, how did it come about? Who's it for? And what is it about? So, hi, Karen, my beautiful soul sister.
Hi, I am so excited to hear about your book because I know that you are in a space of looking for an agent and getting it published. And so tell us, just start by telling us, what is the name of your book? I have so many questions for you. What is the name?
I can't wait to talk to you about it. Well, I've actually changed the name a number of times, and who knows, it may even change again. But at this point in time, the book is called Effortless Abundance, and the tagline is a spiritual quest to create a conscious life with less effort and more play.
I love it. And so, what does that mean to you? The effortless abundance.
The effortless abundance is basically the opposite to how I lived my life before I had my spiritual awakening, which is we are so aligned and in flow with the universe that we are manifesting and creating the life of our dreams without the hard toil. Now, that doesn't mean we don't go outside our comfort zones. That doesn't mean that we don't take any action. That doesn't mean that we just sit there and pray and meditate and hope that the universe delivers everything. It means that we co-create with the universe in a way that we we receive everything that the universe has to offer. And it's just such a beautiful, effortless way of living. And it is our birthright. That's the way that it needs to be. We think that it needs to be hard toil. We think that it needs to be stress. We think that it needs to be drama, but it doesn't need to be.
We do, and it's a feat to get to where you are. But I want to back up a little bit because I know you obviously very well. You're my soul sister. But tell us, before you had the concept of writing the book or before you found effortless abundance for yourself, tell us about your life. Tell us who you were.
Oh my God.
Mhm.
My life was crazy,
Yeah.
manic. But having said that, like I didn't know any different and I absolutely loved it. But I had a business for 14 years and I created it out of nothing. It became a very successful 7-figure business. And I worked really, really hard. And I would say that I worked 7 days a week, very long hours. Sometimes, some parts of the year, I was traveling from city to city literally every day to give presentations and workshops. There was a lot going on. I created a hypnotherapy clinic from my lounge room, and I ended up creating the first global hypnotherapy clinic in the world with 22 clinics around the world in the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia. So I had 22 licensed partners. I taught over 4,000 HypnoFit practitioners the HypnoFit system. I had trainers. So it was a life that I lived with passion because I believed in everything that I did, and it made a huge impact. but I was also operating where my nervous system was really frazzled. And I didn't know how frazzled it was until I stopped all that activity, because I was used to always being on the go, 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 doing multiple things at once, trying to control everything. So I had a large team that worked for me. And every time somebody in the team didn't do what I expected, I would get stressed. I would get, it would be not good enough because I was a perfectionist. It was a stressful existence. And when you live like that, there's a lot of joy, a lot of passion, a lot of happiness, a lot of fulfillment, a lot of adventure, because I met you, I met so many people that became my lifelong friends. But it's a spot where what you're doing is never enough and where you're going is really far away. So, the ultimate aim usually is financial independence, this mythical destination of there's going to be this time and space where I'm going to be completely free because I'm going to be financially independent. And it's really just a concept that you're holding on to. And you keep working and working and working and working towards this concept. And so even when I achieved huge milestones, like it was massive, it was like, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? And it wasn't really just smelling the roses. Where am I? What have I got? What can I be grateful for? And so that's not to say that I didn't have gratitude, I didn't have joy, and I didn't have happiness, I didn't have fulfillment. I did. But I also had a lot of stress. I also had a lot of drama. I also had a lot of anxiety, which at the time I would say, no, it's not anxiety, but it was, because it was concern about the future and what the future held and what was the next thing and how many people were going to turn up to my workshops. And it just kept going on and on and on and on, and there was no end to it. So that's what my life was like before. It was pretty much a state of my nervous system being completely contracted and this kind of feeling that everything is intense. I think that's the word to describe the before my spiritual awakening. Big time intensity. And in fact, when people met me back then, it's not to say that I didn't, exuberate joy and love and inclusiveness for everybody, but people would say I was intense. Would you agree?
Well, what I saw is I know you went from corporate to your own business, and it was a space of you being what I saw is on autopilot. There was no time to breathe. It was in the doing all the time. I remember you would be on Facebook Lives all the time, and you did it very well. You managed it very well, and you wore it well. And the new you is fascinating to see the changes in you. So I'm curious, what happened in your life that created the shift to write the book and where you are now?
Oh my God. So this is the first part of the book. I'll just, what actually happened was I had a spiritual awakening. And if you asked me 5 years ago as to what a spiritual awakening is, I would have given you a different answer to what I know now after having gone through it. So my book that I'm writing, Effortless Abundance, is in 3 parts. The first part is what happened. So that's that question that you're asking, what happened? And I'll give you a snapshot of that today. The second part is, well, after I had the spiritual awakening, what were my insights? And so the part 2 of the book is 8 mind-bending revelations that I had. And part 3 is the path to peace. So what are the practical tools that I have learned along the way to integrate it into my life? So I've created 13 practical tools, a chapter each, on what I do to continue this process. Because when you have a spiritual awakening, it's not just about, oh, now I know this. There's a lot more to it. How do I implement this in my life after having years and years and years of programming and conditioning that has taught me otherwise. And it's a daily conscious effort. And that's why the tagline is a spiritual quest to create a conscious life, because we do everything unconsciously.
Mhm.
So it's all about being conscious. And so going back to your question, what happened? Well, what happened was this. And of course, the first part of my book is going to have all the detail. But what actually happened was when we went into lockdown across the globe, when we had our global pandemic, the first thing that happened was, like many other people, I started to notice emotions starting to come up within me that I thought, I don't do anymore, such as judgment. So I started to feel judgment come up within me. I started to judge people for their decisions with the way they were treating other people. So when the pandemic came on, people were judging people. So people were judging people who were wearing a mask. People who were wearing a mask were judging people who weren't wearing a mask. People were judging people who had the vaccination. People were judging people who didn't have the vaccination. Like, it was like this huge divisiveness. And that divisiveness is what I judged. And it came to me that I started to become really angry, and it came to a boiling point when I went on Facebook and I did a live, and I was really angry at the people that were judging. But what was a massive aha moment for me was I was judging. And isn't that what happens? When we get emotional about something, what actually happens is that that emotion actually exists within us. So I was actually holding judgment myself for people who were judging. So I was judging the judger.
Mhm.
And so then it became apparent that there's stuff going on for me. And I knew that this isn't who I really was. And the next, I think within 2 hours, within half an hour, I deleted that video because I didn't want to be that angry person. That's not who I am. It's not who I wanted, the world to know. But I also wanted to find out who I was, because if I'm not that, then who am I? And so what I started to do was I started to follow somebody online who I personally knew, who had gone to Costa Rica to take ayahuasca, which, for those of you who don't know, ayahuasca is a sacred plant medicine. It can be known as a psychedelic, but it is a plant medicine because it's created by the earth and created by Mother Nature. It's been taken by over thousands and thousands of years by indigenous cultures across the globe who have given this sacred medicine under the guidance of trained shamans, master shamans. So it's a lineage that's been carried over generation upon generation upon generation. The Western world knows it as a psychedelic, but in fact, it's not just a drug where you have a hallucination. It is a portal to another world. And so I started following this person who I personally knew, who was overseas, who went to Costa Rica and had this medicine. And I became fascinated. And so I started to watch documentaries when I was in lockdown, of one after the other, like YouTube documentaries on ayahuasca. And so many people were talking about how their life had transformed, how they let go of addictions immediately, how it changed their life. And I became fascinated by the power of this plant. And like anything, you can feel it when something's pulling you. Like, it was just like this massive pull about, going along this path. And so I said to Christian, when lockdown's over, I'm flying to Costa Rica and I am doing ayahuasca. because this is incredible. It's transformative, it's powerful, and I want some of it. I want to know what I don't know. I want to find out more about who I am. And as this has happened to me so many times, and I talk about this in the book, all the different synchronicities that occurred to me. And what actually happened then was, because we're in lockdown, and so we weren't permitted to go to the gym. So I had created me and Christian had created a gymnasium in our garage,
Mm.
and we were training every day. And the next day, as I was stretching, so the training was fine. As I was stretching, I just got caught, like my body got caught, and it was like, okay, I need to see someone because I got stuck. And I had to think about who to see, because prior to that period of time in my life, my second husband was a physical therapist. And so he would help me with all that kind of body stuff. And so I didn't have anyone. But then it came to me, quite a few people had said to me about this amazing physical therapist. That's the word I think in America that we use, but in Australia it's myotherapist. And this particular person is a blind man who is magical with his hands. And so I contacted him and I went to him so that he could heal my body because it was stuck. There was like a muscle that just got stuck, or a nerve or something, I don't know. And all of a sudden, he started talking about plant medicine. And it was really incredible because I didn't bring it up. I had never talked about it with anyone else ever. Just the night before, I made a decision, and the decision was, as soon as lockdown is over, I'm going to Costa Rica. That was the decision. The very next day, the universe went into action. And that's the kind of story that has come throughout my life. So it's not just a maybe I'll go, but the moment I'm like, that is it. Nothing can stop me. I'm having this experience. Well, basically, the experience came to me. And the magical thing about it, Karen, was that this particular gentleman, he had a very conservative appearance. So if his appearance was, and I know this is all but judgments and it's all conditioning and all programming, but just say he had dreadlocks, and just say he wore hippie type clothes, and just say he looked like someone who smoked marijuana all his life, and then he talked to me about plant medicine, I wouldn't have been so gun ho and yeah, let's do it. But because he looked like an accountant, he talked in a very articulate way. He had a very conservative appearance about him. He was obviously very smart. He started to talk about his own experience with plant medicine in the state that I was in Victoria. And it was like, what? We have it here? And then he started talking to me about this whole underground network where people from all parts of life go to secretly. So we have police sergeants and inspectors and judges and lawyers and CEOs and people from all over that have had this incredible experience with this shaman that's been trained by the Peruvian elders in Peru. And it was incredible that this was in my hometown. And so that's how the journey began for me, because there it was, the decision the night before that I was going to travel to Costa Rica, having no clue that this was, because it's illegal in Australia, that this was going to be available in Australia, not just by someone who was sort of playing around with it, but someone who was trained by the maestros that have trained the generations before as to how to conduct the ceremonies for this sacred medicine. And he started talking about it the very next day.
So tell me, at that point, when you recognized your Facebook post and how you were judging the judgers, and then this situation, I have two questions around it. One, how long in between the two? And two, where were you in your life at that time? Were you still on the rat race? Were you still in your businesses? So tell us about that, where you were.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, in terms of the timeline between one and the other, very, very tight. Like it was a matter of weeks.
Okay.
In terms of where I was in my business, at the most profitable time that I've ever been in my business. So the pandemic helped me enormously, in the sense that I no longer had travel expenses. I pivoted immediately. I didn't think twice. And that's the way I used to run my businesses from the beginning. I used to act very quickly. Yes, I made a lot of decisions that weren't profitable, but because I made so many decisions, many of them stuck and many of them were profitable. So I was never one to hold back. I was never one to be fearful of not jumping forward. So at that point where I was and I made that decision, I was running all my events online. My business was growing. I had more profits than I had ever had before. And we were doing really, really, really well. And I didn't have to go anywhere. I didn't have to pay for hotels. I didn't have to pay for airplanes. I didn't have to pay for Ubers. I didn't have to pay for restaurants. I didn't have to pay for any of that. Everything was online. My clinic even started to, we created efficiencies that we never would have created before by doing a lot of the work that we were doing online. It was just this incredible increase in efficiency and productivity across my business, across both arms of my business, the clinic and the training arm. So where I was busier than ever. And I guess even though I wasn't doing all the traveling, it started to become harder than ever simply because it started to feel tiresome in terms of the work that I was doing. Like it wasn't, I started to feel sick before every event. So before running every event, I felt really sick in my tummy, like this feeling like, oh, here we go again, here we go again, here we go again. But because by that stage, I had run those events for so long, for so many years, that I was just ready to let it go, but I was too afraid to let it go because, well, what next? And I had taken so many years to get to this point, and it was so successful, and I had created a business that I'd never, ever would have imagined would have been possible. And so that's where I was at that point in my business.
I have so many questions also about the book, and I'm sure our listeners do also. But um, I want to know about your writing journey, first of all, because before we get into the book and the details of it, I'd love to hear about your writing journey. But even before that, who is the book written for?
Yeah, I believe the book is written for, I have this belief that whatever we're teaching to our former selves. So the book is written for those people out there who know that there is something more. They know that we are not alone, that perhaps synchronicities are starting to appear. Because before I had my spiritual awakening, I was well aware that I had the universe supporting me, because many things had happened in my past where you could only explain them as miracles and magical and synchronicities. So lots of events happened for me to know for sure that I was not alone, that there is so much more than what we think there is. But I didn't quite get how it worked. And I just want to say this, I still don't know how it works because I don't believe any of us do. It is so huge. The web is so incredible. It's so masterful. It's so perfect. It's so intricate that we just keep learning more and more and more and more. So I don't want to sit here and say, oh, I know how it works now. Although that's what I thought when I had my spiritual awakening, because all of a sudden you see this huge, a different aspect that you never knew before, and you think
Yeah,
you know it all, but you
it's
don't.
like Your eyes were closed and your eyes are now open. Yes.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like it's like, I love this example that Anita Mojani gives. Anita Mojani, who is the author of Dying to Be Me. It's like when you're unconscious, you're actually walking through this warehouse that's completely in the dark. And then when she had a near death experience, and when she not a near death experience, she actually died because she had cancer, and she was brought back to life. But she had everything, every part of her had died. And when she had died, it was like she put a flashlight and the entire warehouse lit up and she could see everything. And that's what it felt like for me with the spiritual awakening, that I could see everything. But what actually happens when you come back is that the lights go off again. And so you have to hang on to what you saw, but you also need to remember that what you saw is still not it. It's still not it. There's still so much more. And so who this book is for people who know, you're not alone. You know that the universe is here to protect you. You know that the universe is here to offer you everything you could possibly desire, but you just don't know how it works. And that disclaimer I'm saying is, I don't know how it works either, but I know how. I've learnt a lot along the way. I've learnt I'm at a place in my life now where I'm living in a place of total gratitude every single day. It's miraculous to me as to how I'm living, what I'm doing, how I live my life, how I wake up, how my life is. And I can help those people go from where they were to that crazy stress, drama, busy, to where I am, which is a place of peace and harmony and gratitude, and just seeing everything from a completely different perspective and just watching the universe do its magic. And there's still a lot that I learn every single day. And that's who I'm talking to, the spiritually curious people who want to co-create with the universe, who are tired of the treadmill of work, who are tired of just looking forward to holidays and having to work the rest of the time. And I'm not saying that you don't work. I'm just saying that your entire perspective shifts. And so this book is all about real practical tools. You know me, Karen, I'm a very practical person. So when people talk too high level, I always bring it back to basics. Like, okay, practically, how do we do this? So
Mhm.
if you give me a concept, so how do I do this? How do I work this in my life? And so that's who it's for. It's for the spiritually curious who want to co-create with the universe beyond their wildest dreams of what is possible, and create a conscious life of peace and harmony and gratitude and joy.
So possibly someone that is on the rat race, that is questioning, what else is there? This can't be
Yes.
all there is to life.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do I make it easier? How do I make this more simple?
Yeah. How do I make this easier?
Mhm.
How do I find out more of who I am really? Because who we think we are is not who we are.
Yeah. So did this book percolate for a while as you were going through this transition, and then one day you said, I need to write a book on this?
No, so the day after the spiritual awakening, I started journaling and writing, journaling and writing and writing and writing. And I knew I had to write a book because what I had seen and felt and experienced in my spiritual awakening was so profound that I knew I had to share it. Like, I can't keep something like this to myself. So I had to share it. So I started writing and writing and writing. But because I wasn't clear in terms of the structure and how I was going to get my message across, I wrote many different versions, many
Mhm.
different structures before I finally got to this structure, which is the 3-part structure, which is part 1, the spiritual awakening, what happened, what did I see? Part 2 is my mind-bending revelations, and part 3 is 13 practical tools that we can use every single day to get us from that stressful place to that peaceful, co-creating, conscious, manifesting life. So it took a while to get to that 3-part structure. And, we're going to be talking about every single chapter in upcoming episodes. Today was really just about, how did it all come together. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's how
Okay.
it came together.
So when you tell us about the three separate parts, were they three different concepts you had, and then you thought to yourself, these actually all work together, and yet they're different parts of the same book?
I think where I got very confused is because before my spiritual awakening, like I said, many things happened to me in terms of synchronicities and miracles and so on. And it was like, where do I start? Like, where do I start? There's so much that's happened. Where do I begin? But when you write a book, you don't have to write it as if it's like from the beginning to the end.
Hmm.
And instead, you can just write it from the pivotal moment, and then you can reference things from before then. And so no, once I had that final structure in my mind, then I understood the structure, and then I went with that. I knew that I had to explain what happened. I knew I had to explain, well, what were my revelations? And then I knew I had to explain, well, how do I implement this into my daily life? And I do have like journal prompts for people to do. I do have like key points at the end of chapters, so people can wrap their head around as to what I'm saying. And most importantly, I've got a lot of examples and stories and personal stories around every concept that I bring up. So it's not just a concept. It's like,
Hmm.
well, how did it play up in my life? How did it show up in my life?
Hmm. So it's a teaching book, if you put it in a category.
It, if I put it in a category, I call it a stealth help book. So stealth help, in other words, it's not just like self-help, do this, 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 and this, and part memoir, because there's so much of me in this book, and a lot of vulnerability as well. I
That's
talk
my next
about
question.
all the things that happened in my life that, you know, I wasn't necessarily proud of in the past, decisions I made where I had a lower level of consciousness and awareness. And it's about being okay with bringing all of that up, because we're all at a journey, we're all on a journey where we have a different level of awareness. And every single day, my level of awareness increases as we go to unconscious. We start from unconscious, where we're unconscious. We just do things unconsciously without even realizing we're doing them. And then we get to a point where we become conscious, but we're still doing them because they're habits. And so we're still doing those habits, even though we're now conscious of them. And so then we need to get ourselves to a place where we are completely aligned mentally, physically, and spiritually, consciously, so that um, when we're aligned, that's when we don't have disease. That's when we don't have illness, because it's complete alignment with everything in our body. So our thoughts, our feelings, our actions are completely aligned. And I know that's a big statement to make, and I'm not saying that people who have illness, it's your fault. It's not about fault. It's about recognizing where you're at, what's going on for you, what you're still keeping inside that's manifesting in illness, and what needs to leave the body. And most of the time, we're unaware of all those things. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
I think I
And
digress.
yeah, and what you're saying, it makes a lot of sense. And being that you are a hypnotherapist and you recognize how our thoughts create our reality and our body and our health, you're the perfect person to write a book like this. But I'm curious, if we go back to the vulnerability piece, is there a part of you that is concerned that not only are you being vulnerable about your own life, but you are exposing others, and that concerns you at all?
It's very interesting. That is a very interesting question. So, um, there's an author, an American author, I don't know if you know her, called Joyce Maynard. And she's
Yeah.
one of my favorite fictional authors. And she, in her books, exposed, people and famous people, and she got a lot of flack for it. And what she said was, if you look at it this way, you're in this room and that person's in that room, you're entitled to write about anything in this room because it's your room, it's your story. Having
Mhm.
said that, that's that's the basis of that comment about you are entitled, it's your story, why can't you share your story? Of course you
Mhm.
can.
Yeah.
Now the other side of it is, um, would I talk about anybody in a derogatory way? No, because I don't have those feelings for anybody.
Mhm.
So I don't have derogatory feelings for anybody. I don't hold anything but compassion for
Yeah.
anybody.
Right.
So, there's nobody that I bring up in a light that's derogatory and non-loving.
Mhm.
And what I was also mindful of was that when I did talk about, say, somebody and may have mentioned not their brightest or their best parts, I then also talked about their best parts because there's duality in all of us. So
Mhm.
I've talked about my faults and I've talked about my strengths.
Mhm.
And with the people that I care for and I love, I honestly don't believe that any of them will have any concerns or issues with what I've mentioned in the book because I do care and love for all of them. With people that I've said things that may have occurred, like little stories of instances that have occurred with me, I didn't mention their name. So nobody could possibly know that altercation was with that particular person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I love what you said because I just heard something recently. It was a publisher that was saying, don't write a memoir or a book about your life until you are fully healed. So if you are in the midst of it, whether it's a hard relationship or a tragedy that you're going through, if you haven't moved through to the healing part, don't write about it because we want to hear, like you said, leading with love. We want to hear the how I healed from it and who I became because of it. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really not who I became. I feel like it's going back to who I really am. So
Mm,
I really feel like this is a going back home book,
mhm,
like who we really are. We don't change into different people. We
mhm,
just let go of the layers to get back to who we really are.
yeah,
Like the identity that I had created, I now see that as an identity that I had created.
mhm.
And it's just stripping back and stripping back to who I really am.
So I'm not asking you this time because in our next episode, we get to the space of you went from being this business woman, successful businesswoman in the corporate world, making a lot of money, to a completely different space where you had time to write and time to be curious and time to learn. And we are going to get into that as we go through the different chapters. But before that, the question I have for you is, tell us a little bit about when you would write. When that all happened for you. Was it the evening? Was it during the day? How did you find the time to do it? Or where did you place the pieces so that you could write this book that was your soul's calling, is what I'm understanding.
Yeah, that's a really good question because 10 years ago I wrote another book and that was called Mindset Dominance. And I wrote that very differently. So I forced myself to write it, but this is all about the mind. So I forced myself to write it in a very, very busy schedule where every single second actually like I was doing something. So I had to force myself. When I wrote that book, I literally had no weekends. The only time that I had off was when I was actually invited to, say, a party. Other than that, I did not rest. But this book is written from my soul, not from my mind. And so for me, it was really important that if I didn't want to write it, I didn't. So I didn't do any of the rules. So Mindset Dominance, although a fantastic book, and if you wanted to lose weight and stop self-sabotage and break bad habits, it is awesome.
It is. It is.
It's written from a different perspective. This book, I didn't follow any formula. So even though I had joined a author community which had a certain formula about how to write these books, I couldn't. It made me sick. Any kind of formula made me internally ill. I didn't want to follow anyone's formula. I just wanted to write. And so if I felt like I just can't write today, I just can't, I won't. So I never forced myself to write. But when it came to me to write, I then would like continue until like I had nothing else left. So I created a space this time where I lit a candle. I created a sacred space. I would do a prayer. I would ask to be supported by my spirit guides, my angels, whoever would like to come through. And then I would just start, and I would continue until I was exhausted that night. And then I may not write for another 3 days. So it wasn't, sit down at this time and do it no matter what, force yourself. It really was coming from a labor of love. It really did. So I did it very differently. No formulas, just the way that I wanted to write, whenever I wanted to write. So that's the way that I did it. Many people talk about waking up and doing it first thing. For me, I have to move first thing. So I have to get up, do my meditation, and then move. That's what I've got to do. And so it wasn't first thing. It was always once I got back after breakfast kind of thing.
I love it. And I did have a book coach also a good 6 or 7 years ago now when I wrote a book for my business, also the Hypnose Niche book. And with that book coach, just like you, because it was more of a mind book and I was doing it for business, it was every single day for 45 minutes. Set your alarm, put everything else away. Even if you just sit there and you have writer's block, 45 minutes of structured time, which is also very different than the way I wrote this book. And so I appreciate hearing that it was really, it was when it worked for you and it was when your creativity was open to let it flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, we're about out of time today. I have so many more questions for you about effortless abundance. And I can't wait to get into the details of the chapters and truly what this book is about. And so it can help all of these people and souls and consciousness of the world. So thank you for sharing everything that you did today.
Thank you, my love. I love you so much.
Love you.
Love you. Bye. Thanks for watching. We hope you loved it.
And if you did, please like this video and subscribe to the channel.
And remember, always connect to your truest essence.
And choose love. We'll see you next time.